We're off today to an undisclosed location where last year we found a few chanterelle mushrooms, but we were a little bit late in the season. So it's August. Chanterelles should be in season now. We're going to go and see if we can find some. While we're here though, look, these are dewberries, relative of the blackberry. I've shown you these on probably many a video before. Relatives of blackberries, very tasty little berries actually, and they always look a little bit malformed like this, and when you pick them they often fall apart into the individual little drupelets, but they taste good. Sort of like similar to a blackberry, a bit more subtle flavour. I always think they taste a bit like red wine. Dewberries are often a bit earlier than blackberries. As you can see, the blackberries here are really only just getting started, or I can see a ripe one there just out of reach. So you very often find dewberries just a week or two earlier than blackberries. This plant here, I can tell from the foliage, is wild raspberries, but I think we're probably a little bit late for raspberries. But that's definitely a wild raspberry plant. And in places where you find raspberries and blackberries and dewberries all growing together, you sometimes find natural hybrids where the plants have crossed and produced something that's essentially similar to things like boysenberry or loganberry or tayberry. And so you can find completely natural, wild occurring hybrids. They're not that common though. A little bit of a trek from where we had to park to the spot I'm hoping to find chanterelles, but hopefully it'll be worth it. Here's something to look at. I think this is a devil's coach horse beetle. Well, that's a small one. So it may just be the larva of some other beetle. So it's this kind of woodland with mossy banks throughout it, which could be promising for chanterelles. Whenever I found them in the past, they've always been growing on sort of mossy ridges in poorly drained woodland. So usually it's a little bit damp in the deeper parts, and so the fungi find their ideal place in the bank, not in the wettest bit at the bottom, not in the driest bit at the top. And so these kind of drainage ridges or banks or ruts or whatever they are, often caused by forestry machinery, when they cover over with moss, provide a habitat for chanterelles to find their kind of ideal moisture level. Anyway, the place I'm most hopeful for is a little bit further up here. I do get quite a lot of questions about why do our woods in the UK look like they do. There's a diversity of different kinds of woodland in the UK. This one is a plantation. This is a plantation of, I think, what's that, larch? So this is a commercial plantation of larch that will be harvested for wood pulp, perhaps for paper, or maybe for timber, for fences or something like that. And you can tell it's a plantation because the trees are planted in regimented rows. Time to go off the track a little bit and have a little rummage in these woods here. This is where we found them last year, somewhere in the kind of mossy parts underneath these trees, and they are a thing that you'll find in the same location year on year. So it really is a case of trampling through all of this. I keep getting tricked by yellow leaves. We are looking for something that's going to be bright egg yolk yellow, but I keep on seeing things that are the right colour but just aren't the right thing. There's something there, but I don't think it's a chanterelle. No, it's just a Just a yellow leaf off the beech tree by the look of it. Oh look, there is a door beetle, also known as Dumbledore, and that was called Dumbledore before the whole magical headmasters thing. That's the old English name for it. That's called a door beetle. Okay, well this bit up here looks quite promising, just on account of the amount of moss and banks and stuff. So we'll have a wander up here. This is the right kind of spot. This is exactly the right kind of spot, but I don't see any mushrooms. Yeah, this is the kind of place where you should expect to find chanterelles if you're going to find them anywhere. So yeah, I don't know. We might be going home with an empty basket again today. Seems to be a bit of a trend for me foraging since we've come down to Dorset. So I think, well, I might have to try and find some people who will be a bit generous with their local knowledge of foraging spots and maybe share one or two of them with me. Or I might have to switch to some other mode of foraging, coastal shellfish foraging or something. Or we make a trip to the New Forest, which is where I used to go out to go foraging, which will be reliable, I'm sure. But I think the problem with a lot of this is it takes, it took me half a lifetime to find the good foraging spots in the New Forest, and then of course we moved away from that, so I'm playing catch up here. But again, this is exactly the sort of place you would find chanterelles if you were going to find them. This blanket of mossy, lumpy ground, but sadly no chanterelles in sight. Now the camera isn't always pointing where my eyes are pointing, so if you do see something that you think is a chanterelle, do let me know in the comments, maybe include a timestamp, because that will help me find the thing that you're looking at. But yeah, there are a lot of things, there are a lot of kind of false positives here, little yellow leaves, pieces of broken wood that have a yellowish hue. But nothing much. And sometimes pieces of flint. That's a piece of flint, for example. So there's flint and chalk, which can sometimes have a whitish or yellowish colour, sticking up through the moss from a distance. Not always easy to tell. Are you alright, Jenny? Yeah, something yellowish on the ground there, but it's not mushrooms. There's a piece of chewed up pine cone, perhaps, or something like that. Where a squirrel has dragged a pine cone in here. Oh, I don't even know. Yeah, that is the scales off a pine cone, or a conifer, some sort of conifer cone. So a squirrel's probably dragged that in here to open it up and eat the seeds inside. Well, I'm not finding anything, are you? Again, this is what should be a promising spot. So mossy, clearly a bit damp in places, lumpy enough to provide options for the mushroom to grow on a drier or a moister bit. The only thing missing is the mushrooms. Yeah, I saw her a minute, yeah, I've got her. So perhaps I need to retitle this video ASMR stepping on twigs in the forest or something, rather than foraging. Yeah, I'm sure this is where we found them last year, but nada. so far. Now the other thing is that sometimes fungi will have a rest and they will fruit madly one year and not at all the next. So that could be also happening here. There are all kinds of factors that can drive whether or not you're going to find mushrooms in any particular spot. So you can have a really good spot and go there the next year and there's just nothing, and then some subsequent year later on there'll be another big bloom of them. I seem to remember we found an eggshell last time we came here. Looks like a pigeon's egg, I would say. Pigeon or dove or something like that. Hello, little dingus. Good girl. You've got what you found? You found a rock. Well done. Find me a truffle. What you got? What you got? You got something in your mouth, haven't you? Is it stone? Oh, well, there's something. There's a fungus, but I'm not sure what that is. There's one that's already been knocked over, so we can have a look at that. I don't know. There's one there, another one there, over there, here and there. I don't know what these are, so I'm not going to pick them, obviously, but I'll see if I can identify them from a good picture. So yeah, it doesn't look like we're going to be lucky with fungi. There's a feather from a wood pigeon, further corroborating my guess that eggshell was a pigeon's egg. There's another feather over there, but that's a wood pigeon feather. Well, okay, I'm going to call it quits now because we've had a really good rummage through what was the promising bit last year and found nothing. So I'll go and rejoin the group, and we may have to call it a day and come home with an empty basket. What doing, doggo? You looking for the perfect rock? So it's never a complete loss coming out for a walk foraging, even if we do return home with an empty basket, because it's so wonderfully quiet and tranquil here, apart from me yapping on. I can hear distant traffic, and that's about the only noise of human activity I can hear, apart from, as I say, my own voice. Well, I think so that this isn't a complete bust, this video. We'll have a look on the way back at how to tell the difference between raspberries, blackberries and dewberries. So yeah, one of the questions I often get asked is, why isn't there any understory? Why is there nothing, no sort of underlayer in these forests? And part of this is, in somewhere like this, which is a beech forest, the canopy fills in almost completely and blocks out all the light. So you will find a few plants growing underneath here, but really what happens in here in spring is you get the ephemeral plants come up really early, get their leaves up, get their flowers done, you know, so bluebells, celandines, anemones, those sorts of things. They're just herbaceous plants that grow on the forest floor, and they get their life cycle sort of complete by the time the canopy fills in, because it is actually quite dark here underneath these beech trees. They are capturing a significant proportion of the available light. So down here at the forest floor you get a few ferns and things and a few straggly brambles and holly bushes and the like, but there isn't enough light here for a proper underlayer, not under beech trees. Other places where we'll find things open out a little bit, and you do find, you know, you get a more of a undergrowth layer. So over there we can see there's a clearing, and that's filled in with brambles and small shrubs and young trees. fact, I can see a pine tree over there starting to make an effort to grow. So that's probably a clearing that's been created by a fallen tree, and in fact probably that tree. So a tree's fallen there, created a patch of light, and you can see everything immediately grows and goes crazy. Not all of those plants will win that battle ultimately. A few trees will manage to put up a stalk, and then eventually another large tree will dominate that little clearing, and it'll fill in this space in the canopy, and then the forest floor will revert back to this kind of more sparsely growing mode. But the soil is full of seeds, and there are squirrels here that will distribute the seeds, so there's no chance of bare soil remaining bare. What have you found? What is it?
It's just a
You tell it. You tell it, Eva. It's a plastic bottle. Well, thank you for saving us, Eva. Well done, you. It's a bottle, you lunatic. It's a plastic bottle. Probably been dumped there by, it probably had oil in it, and it's probably from forestry work or something.
Yeah.
We'll carry that back. I'll find a bin for it. You lunatic. I mean, I can see why she was surprised by it. It was completely out of place, wasn't it? But right, anyway, camera off for now, I think. After that little bit of excitement. So here's an example of what happens when the canopy is cleared away. So this has been coppiced, this area. This is chestnut mostly, and it's been cut down to create these poles. And then, but look how everything just suddenly comes to life when the canopy is cleared away. The dense canopy cleared away, light can get down to the ground level, and the understory layer can grow. So if it was a different kind of forest, you might find there would be a understory layer. If it's the kind of trees with sparser canopy, that might support an underlayer. But beech trees generally fill in, well, especially as these are probably planted, these beech trees, they're probably not wild completely. This is probably a plantation, and so these beech trees might be closer together than they would be in a truly wild forest. So how to tell the difference between blackberries, raspberries and dewberries. This is a blackberry bush. Obviously, when the fruit are present, it's quite easy to identify them. So those are not very nice looking blackberries there, but those are blackberries. In the absence of fruit, here's what I would look for to identify these plants. So you've got leaf stalks that either have 5 or sometimes 3 leaflets like that. The whole plant has got vicious thorns. The thorns are quite variable. The whole plant, actually. Blackberries are more variable than the other 2 things I'm going to talk about today. So here's one example of a blackberry stem. There's a different example of a blackberry stem, but both blackberries, probably different subspecies or varieties or whatever, but always with the very vicious thorns, unless you get a cultivated variety that's thornless. So, and those thorns extend up onto the underside of the leaf stalks, and very often actually the underside of the leaves themselves as well. Let's have a look and see if I can find an example of that. Yeah, there we go. So underside of the leaf stalks and everything incredibly thorny. Leaves are typically dark green, quite dull. So blackberries you'll find in shade, in full sun, hedgerows. They really grow just about anywhere, and the flowers may be pink like this or white like that. Those are both blackberries, possibly different subspecies. So that's blackberries. So raspberries, on the other hand, very often you'll find these in shade. Certainly not usually in full sun. I've just spotted there's a remnant of one of the fruits. There you go. And obviously the fruits are conspicuously different. Bright red fruits raspberries have, as opposed to the purple fruits of the other 2. But so raspberries, stiff, upright stems, but still quite slender, usually thornless. And then they have, again, these leaves which have got 3 or sometimes 5 leaflets. There's one with 5, there's one with 5, there's one with 3. The leaves are softer and kind of slightly downy, usually paler green, and the stems are completely smooth and stiff and slender, and they have this kind of slightly waxy bloom on them, which makes them look a little bit paler than they really are. So that's raspberries, and most often you'll find raspberries growing in shade or partial shade, so actually well into the woods or on the edge of woodland. I mean, I think you will find them in full sun sometimes, but they tend to prefer the shadier spots, unlike the blackberry, which really just doesn't care where it grows. And dewberries, a bit difficult to see here actually because they're growing mixed with brambles and some raspberries. Dewberries most often found on the edge of woodland or on the edge of a path. They really like the kind of mixed environment of being on the edge of woodland and shade and open areas. So this is a dewberry. Let's have a closer look at the stems. Stems, very, very slender, and they tend to run right across the path. Similar to a blackberry in that they've got this 3 leaflets or 5 leaflets, and they've got little thorns on them, but the thorns are much less serious than the thorns you'll find on blackberries. These are almost just like little bristly hooks. You can still hurt yourself on them, but they're not nearly as kind of vicious as the thorns on a blackberry. Sometimes the stems will have like a glaucous, whitish, bluish, waxy bloom on them, and the stems will look really white as they cross the path. This one's not doing that, but this is dewberry stems, and they're just kind of, they've got no stiffness or kind of ability to grow straight up, so they just spread and sprawl all over the place. So very often dewberries are lower than waist height. So that's dewberry. And yeah, in the absence of fruit, that's how to tell the difference between these 3 plants. Obviously the fruits are very different. So raspberries, bright red, hardly need any introduction, and likewise brambles, blackberries, again, no introduction required. Everybody's familiar with blackberries. There's a blackberry right there. Dewberries are the odd one out because they're not very well known, and so they've got a fruit that's like a blackberry. It looks like a malformed blackberry, and it has fewer of the little drupelets, and they tend to be irregular, and when you pick it they very often come apart in your hand. But that's a feature, not a bug. When I mentioned earlier that these 3 plants, blackberries, dewberries, raspberries, sometimes hybridize, here is a possible hybrid. So the fruits look a little bit like a blackberry, but they're a little bit, tiny bit bloomy, but they're bigger than a dewberry. But they're still really irregular and they fall apart when you pick them. But the stems have got proper thorns. Not very many thorns, but they are proper little wicked hooked thorns there. So I'm going to say that that thing there is most likely a dewberry blackberry hybrid. Anyway, I hope that's been interesting, even though we've had really nothing to actually pick and eat and take home today. But I hope that's been interesting nonetheless. So empty basket, but we still had a nice day out. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.